garbage. You know what's funny is when you're a kid, it's like, don't go get in strangers' vehicles. And now we're like offended. What, do we not look like nice enough girls to get in your vehicle? I just want to warm up for a little bit.
Oh, man.
That's actually really funny.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Carrie.
And I'm Molly.
And you're listening to the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast. So here we are at day 6. As we fell asleep last night, it was rainy and cold, and here's the ironic part about that morning. I feel like we didn't get out of our tent for a while because we didn't want to get rained on, and then when we got out of our tent, there was no rain. It was just the tree was dripping on the tent. Do you remember that?
I feel like that always happens.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's the smartest thing to pitch your tent under a tree or not, because maybe you save yourself a downpour, but then you gain basically
like
the
all
tent
night
getting dripping
on
all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was one of those days where it was kind of cloudy and you can kind of try to peek out of the tent and things look socked in.
Well, you couldn't peek out of the tent actually because your side had the broken zipper.
That's correct. Oh my gosh, it's true. And so you think like, well, maybe I'll just wait another 5 minutes and it'll get better. But I don't think it ever truly does.
But, well, especially because it wasn't even raining anyways.
Yeah.
It was just like slightly misty. There was nothing wrong with it.
I think get out of the tent?
I think you finally got out of the tent. No. I had to use the bathroom, so I was like, well, it's time to get up, ladies. And so I finally got out of the tent, and I was like, oh, FYI, it's not even raining out here. There's not a single drop of rain falling on me, so I guess we really can be up and at 'em. And actually that morning, as you said you saw a headlight, right?
Oh,
that's right. A headlamp.
So, yeah. So it must have been like 6 a.m. or so, because the sun had just started coming up. And I was laying in the tent doing my routine where I roll side to side, etc. And
her morning stretches.
I could have swore that I saw the light of a headlamp like shine on our tent as a person passed by. And I thought I saw, it looked like there was 2 people there, but I couldn't know for sure. And I was just like, oh my gosh, Carrie, there's someone else out here.
Yeah. So anyway, we were like, maybe it's our friend from Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
Well, from Tahoe City, but we just couldn't really know anything.
From Lake Tahoe.
We met him in the lake. Anyway, so we just kind of gathered all our stuff together, utilized our cat holes, and packed up our tent, and it was time to go.
I know, and one of our hallmarks is that we just don't ever hit the trail very early.
Yeah, it's not a great hallmark.
We always said... We never got trail names, and maybe we will one day, but we always said we could, like, self-name ourselves just, like, late start.
But I don't want that name, so don't anyone give that to me, and I'm not going to self-name myself that. I don't want to be called late start. So but at the end of the day...
I wrote we left, I think, at 9:15, so
that's not the worst,
and
actually.
We were hoping to get, like, an 18.5-mile day in.
Yeah.
So...
The problem is, I think that we can just go fast enough that it's like, 18 miles, we can still do that before the sun sets.
Exactly.
So then it's like, well, why would I really rush to get out of camp?
Exactly.
But that's not a great
And why would I rush to get out of my sleeping bag when I'm sleepy?
Yeah. Anyway, so we packed up all our gear and we got started, and I honestly really enjoyed a lot of this day. It was like kind of foggy and a little bit cooler, but it was also pleasant, and it's kind of like we lived in Oregon for a while, so it was almost like nostalgic, it felt like, in a way, where it was kind of like that Oregon vibe of it's rainy and cold, but it's okay.
Yeah, and we were still wearing our rain pants, so that was fun.
Not really wet at all.
I know. I think you got water that morning because where we camped, we had a little creek running by us, and I think you mentioned that you like walked down there and your shoes just got soaked.
Yeah, because it like ran down my rain pants onto my shoes.
And so we, we're rolling along. And I think we gained about 1,000 feet over 2 miles to start it off. And we just,
Which felt pretty good.
Yeah, we were just
we were cruising.
Going at
we
our
were just
speed.
rolling.
It was good.
Yeah. The forest was really cool because it had like this electric green moss on all the trees. And it was like all at the perfect angle as it went down the hill, right? Remember, it ended at the same angle on the trunk. Yeah. So it looked so cool.
It was really, really cool.
Yeah,
we appreciated it a lot. And then the higher we got, I mean, we kind of were going into the clouds. It was kind of socked in, and at one point we're hiking in a little bit more of an open area, and there were 2 trail runners who came up behind us, and we just thought, like, what a nice way to spend your Sunday morning.
I was like, good for you guys. You're almost up to the top.
When we got closer to Twin Peaks, we started like there was water dripping from the trees, and you looked up and there was actually, I don't know if it was either snow or rime ice, but the trees were all coated
frosty.
in
So then it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
It was like we didn't have to deal with any snow or anything like that the night before, but then we still got to enjoy kind of how pretty it could be. And I don't know, it was a fun morning. It was beautiful. There was like actually fall colors there.
Yeah.
So like the vines were kind of fall colors, but then they had a little layer of snow on them. So I feel like I was just honestly in such a good mood.
And it was a pretty enjoyable temperature for walking too, especially when we were gaining that much elevation.
Yeah.
And I remember when we got to the part of the trail where you could either junction up to Twin Peaks or keep going towards the PCT like we were going to. We paused for just a minute to just enjoy the sights and the snow on the trees. And I was like, oh, it's actually really cold out here.
Yeah.
I bet it was in the low 30s, really. And at that point, like, you could throw on more layers, but I didn't want to get them sweaty. And so it was just like, we figured we'd
go through it.
Keep walking to maintain our warmth. But yeah, it was a crisp, beautiful morning.
Yeah. So we kind of enjoyed our journey up to Twin Peaks, and we saw all the snow and felt good about our decision. I feel like we were both like, yep, happy we stopped when we did last night.
Actually, the first thing I wrote in my journal summarizing this day was how excited I was that our paperclip / binder clip tent made it through the night. I don't know. For some reason, I was not certain how it would do, and it's
kind of a field test.
Yeah, and so it definitely changed up our morning and evening routines when instead of just putting away your tent, you have to then like take all the paper clips and
delicately
stow them in their little plastic bag.
I don't want to lose you.
But yeah, we thought about, once we were up at the trail junction heading towards the PCT, we thought about stopping for a snack. Yeah. But we decided to just eat and walk because
it was cold enough.
We needed to generate our own body heat.
Yeah, and then we kind of headed downhill, and all of a sudden we hit the PCT, and I feel like we were just so happy to see it. There was actually views on both sides. It's kind of like a spine where you hit the PCT, and the clouds were lifting. And I remember there was this really beautiful view, like one of my favorite views of Lake Tahoe that we saw there. And I don't even know if it's all that special, but it was like the clouds were kind of lifting above the lake, and it was a beautiful, like kind of a U shape almost valley that we were looking at the lake sort of. And there was fall colors, and the vines were looking good. And I think I actually stopped and took a few pictures because I was like, it's so beautiful.
And really, I love that area too, because every half mile to a mile, it seemed we'd cross a little spring that was running across the trail.
Oh, yeah.
And it just felt like such a lush environment. This like beautiful valley, all these vines and trees, and the fall colors like Carrie was saying. And then also there was all this water as well. And someone had told us that once you get, what did they say? I don't know. They told us, like, once you get a little further south down the trail, like, there's an abundance of water, and we were starting to get into that
That's
area.
what the bike packer said.
Yeah. And then another thing that was just kind of fun, like Carrie mentioned, the clouds were parting, and you could just steal a couple of peekaboo views kind of the lake. Yeah. Which was just
stunning.
A fun element.
It was a stunning area.
I really liked it.
And I don't even, it's one of those things where I don't mind clouds when I'm hiking, as long as they don't obscure, like, everything.
Yeah.
So it was just super pretty. And then we were headed towards Barker Pass, actually, which is also a really gorgeous area on the trail. Yeah. And we started seeing people again, which was kind of funny because I feel like, you kind of were in Tahoe City, and then you're like in those forest road logging area / whatever. And then you're kind of in like the silent forest where you're by yourself up to Twin Peaks almost. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I'm seeing day hikers.
What I liked was we had stopped to admire the view. We were really taking it in. Yeah. And then all these, like, 4 day hikers walked up to us. And we visited with them a little bit. And then they were like, oh, this is where we're turning around.
This is our turnaround point.
I was like, how funny that we met you, right at your turnaround point.
Because I thought they just really wanted to stand there and visit with us. But I think what they probably really wanted was for us to just pass them, and then they were going to turn around and go.
Exactly. But it was cool to see people, and we just, enjoyed visiting with them a little bit. And Carrie and I were both getting excited because we were, at that point, like 2 miles from Barker Pass. And
a toilet is there. There's a pit toilet.
And I had read reviews on Far Out, and I felt like it was like uncertain if they had toilet paper or not in there, and I was like, funny. What's gonna happen?
Which we have our own toilet paper, but it's just sometimes nice to use
not
other people's toilet paper, I guess.
Totally. So I've been really like putting that as a high point in my day. I've been looking forward to.
I knew there was gonna be a picnic table to sit at. Because I think people would mention that. So
I know,
we
were just like looking forward to like
a
hint of civilization.
So we got to Barker Pass, and as promised, pit toilet central. Did you go before we had lunch?
I think I waited.
I feel like, I definitely waited till after lunch. So we sat down, we had our trail pizzas, we had our Teddy Grahams, we had our noon, which actually when we were in Tahoe City, we had to redo our electrolytes and we got noon for the first time. Because before I didn't like, you know what, it's kind of fizzy, so it's not like my top pick, but I think I really liked it this time.
I don't think that you did, Carrie. I think it was just more of a you needed to have it in the moment.
I was like, oh, juice.
We just decided from all the different electrolytes available that the Propel ones are just so fun.
They're so good.
And
the little
I
tiny
know
packets.
they keep getting more expensive, and I'm stuck in the time frame where they're $1.20 and maybe they're $2.20. Yeah. But really, you get a good amount for 10. Your money, and the flavors are awesome. Raspberry lemonade. Berry is okay, but
I don't know why you even listed that one. That's not the top one. Yeah,
black cherry
is amazing, but not as good as the raspberry lemonade. And then, actually, I've started liking all of them. Kiwi strawberry was okay.
Oh, man.
There's a lot of good flavors.
So, it messed us up because
we
the Propels come in, like, these little sleeves, and you can just, like, shove them anywhere in the bear can.
That's another reason why I really love them.
Yeah, and so the noons, they're the tablets. Yeah. And we weren't going to bring the, like, container, so we put it in, like, a Ziploc bag, and then we just have to, like, put it somewhere in the bear can. Yeah. So... But a fizzy cold noon was pretty...
Yeah, it still sounded pretty good.
Honestly,
we were really cold at that picnic table, though. Remember, I got out, like, all my extra layers so I could put them on just to sit there.
We stopped, and almost as soon as we stopped, I feel like it was just a very cold day. Honestly, I think when we were looking at the temperatures before we ventured out, I think the high that day was supposed to be, like, 38.
Yeah.
So it was chilly. So we sat
on
the picnic bench.
And it wasn't sunny at that point.
Yeah, it was cloudy. We sat on the picnic bench, and... There was even a couple people who had camped, it looked like, at Barker Pass that were kind of picking up their camp still.
Kind of fun.
And then there was this couple that we visited with when we were maybe a mile from Barker Pass, and they made it back. And they, like, sat in their van for, like, 30 minutes.
Like, what do you want?
And I just really wanted to be, like, knocking on their door and just, like, can I sit in your warm van?
Turn on the seat heat for me.
I'm maybe too friendly of a person at this point, like, more friendly for my own than for my own good. But I kind of, like, wanted to actually just approach them and be like, why didn't you invite us into your van to sit there with you?
Oh, you can talk to us on the trail, but you can't say, come sit in my van?
And then I made myself, like, a little promise in the future, if I ever am at a trailhead where there are thru hikers and I see them there, maybe I won't invite them into my vehicle, but I will ask them if they have any garbage I can take for them.
Oh, yeah.
Because I just was thinking, like, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if they were like, hey, can we take your garbage?
You know what's funny is when you're a kid, it's like, don't go get in strangers' vehicles. And now we're like offended. What, do we not look like nice enough girls to get in your vehicle? I just want to warm up for a little bit.
Oh, man.
That's actually really funny. Yeah. So anyway, we were at Barker Pass.
We had
nice
cell
lunch.
service there, and Carrie likes the Dolphins, so they were playing at that point. So I like attempted to play the Dolphins game on my phone. Mm-hmm. The service wasn't quite good enough, and then you think like, is this even smart to waste battery on it? But
so then we stopped.
We made a couple attempts, and
we just saw they were losing, and then it's like, well, why refresh that?
Exactly.
Anyway,
and I want to say we've still had like 10 miles left of walking.
We did.
So
and then finally Molly got up the courage to say, I'm gonna just go to the bathroom, and then it'll be time to go. So she went. And I feel like you came back and you were like, just FYI, you're gonna freeze to death. And it was like, wow, it was cold in there. There's like a cold wind coming out of the toilet, a cold wind coming in through the cement walls somehow.
It was very clean.
I was like, I might die in here.
Like maybe the temperature prevented any bacterial growth.
It did not smell bad.
But it was so cold. I was just like, good luck, Carrie. Like, best wishes to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was still worth it. I still would choose to use the pit toilet.
I warmed it up for you maybe a degree.
You didn't. You made it colder, if anything. So the nice part about Barker Pass is you were at the top of the pass. So we got to start out kind of our little rest of our trip downhill.
Okay, but that is nice, but in another way not nice because
you're trying to warm up.
I was so cold.
Yeah, that's true.
At this point, my fingers were so cold that I don't remember if I was wearing my big gloves or my small gloves, but basically the only way I could get back feeling in my fingers is when you like ball your hands up in your gloves so that your fingers aren't even in the finger
part. I told you that because you're like, my fingers can't get any warmer. And I think I said to you, none of my fingers are in my gloves. They're all, I was like carrying my trekking pole just via the thumbs.
Yes, that's so we were doing the like thumb trekking pole.
And then every once in a while I would switch to where I would let like a different finger out and then I would keep.
And then you're just walking along with the trekking pole and just like one finger and you're like, well, I hope I don't drop it at some point.
But at least my fingers probably won't have to be amputated.
And after we did the John Muir Trail in September, we'd only brought like just like running gloves. Yeah. And we both, our fingers were just so cold on that trail. We decided, okay, we're going to bring more like ski gloves, which I then only wore like 3 times, I feel like, on the trail. And that would have been a good time to wear them, but for some reason...
I don't know why we didn't.
I didn't put them on.
Yeah, I just put that. I just used.
We were just walking with our thumbs holding our.
Like, why do we even have all these fingers when really what I need is just a thumb and occasionally my pointer finger?
Honestly, yeah. So I would just rotate like which finger would hold the trekking pole. Sometimes the pinkies. While I was trying to heat up the rest of them.
And ironically, I have hand warmers in my pack. I always have hand warmers, but that is for an emergency only.
Exactly.
When that was not an emergency.
No,
that was just a little bit of discomfort.
No, it was not. And so we headed in. Was that at that point? Were we in the Granite Chief Wilderness?
Yeah, I think so.
Or we entered it shortly thereafter.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
So someone had told us, like 2 days before. I think it was the mountain biker that we met on like day 3. He said his favorite section was basically like the Desolation Wilderness, and he was like, "On the Granite Chief Wilderness."
No, that was actually on Far Out.
No,
but go ahead, tell your story.
I was under the impression that someone had told us that there wasn't much there and not even place to pitch a tent.
Yeah, that was Far Out.
Sorry.
But Molly, when I told it to Molly, I just said it so vividly that it was as though some old man had come and spoken to her.
I was just lacking social interaction to the point of reading a comment on Far Out. It just seemed like it was jumping off the page at me.
Yeah, no, it was like someone said, "There's nowhere to camp." Oh wait, actually now I'm remembering. It said that on Far Out, but we also had someone who said that. Who was that? I think it was
the person.
The guy at the
I don't know.
Pizza place, maybe.
A person had told us
Anyways,
that.
yeah.
So we kept mocking as we initially entered the Granite Chief Wilderness. Like, there's not even anywhere to pitch a tent. Because there was a million places to pitch a tent.
Yeah.
But then eventually you do reach a section that's probably 3 or 4 miles long where there's not too many places to pitch one.
Yeah. But it was all downhill, which was super nice. But the funny part was you were by a road that people could ride their like ATVs on. And a few days later, we met someone who had been walking through there, and he said there were people just like driving back and forth blasting country music when he went through there. So again, just kind of an aspect that's funny about the Tahoe Rim Trail, where it's like wilderness meets
it's actually the
country music.
The Rubicon Trail, I think. Yeah, he was like, you would keep like crossing the road, and he just like keep hearing different parts of the same song based on where they were driving. And I also remember, so we, occasionally use the Far Out app to just like check where we're at on the trail and like the profile upcoming, etc. And I remember my map was still on hiking the trail clockwise instead of counterclockwise. And at one point I was like, okay, Carrie, we've got like quite a bit of ascent coming up, very steep ascent. And we were going downhill and we just like kept going downhill. And like every time I'd look at it, I'm like, Carrie, it says we're going uphill and we're going downhill.
And I was just like, wow, I literally don't see any other trail around here. I'm 100% confident this is the correct trail. Like, this is a PCT. This is like a trail.
Yeah.
And finally I got out my phone and I was like, what are you talking about? It says it's all downhill. So I had to flip your map around for you. So after a period of time of walking, I think we decided that we were going to fill our water because ironically the spot that we had chosen to camp at that night was called Stagnant Pond, which all the comments on Far Out were like, it really do be stagnant though.
Well then, but one person was like, I thought it was kind of nice. So then I figured...
And that was why we said we're going to hold on to that one comment. So, but we had one more water source before Stagnant Pond, and it was this kind of nice little brook that was before our uphill elevation. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, there was another lake, but we'd have had to go slightly off the trail, and you know us, we're not going to add on any mileage to this trail.
We didn't give ourselves enough time for that.
So we stopped there, got some water, and then all of a sudden I heard like, tinkle, 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 tinkle. I was like, wow, I'm going crazy. But it turned out there was another hiker out there.
Is that you?
Yeah. But you sound like bells. It turned out there was another hiker out there, and she had been camping kind of up by the Fontanalis Lake the night before. She was super nice. We visited with her for a while, but she had camped the last 2 nights in the Desolation Wilderness, and it snowed on her like a lot. Like I think she said 5 inches or so.
Yeah.
Where she said, you'd get up and like scrape it off your tent, and it seemed like she was having a rough time because that was the first 2 days she was on trail.
She started at
Echo Lake going clockwise, and so we felt kind of bad for her because she was just kind of like, what is going on? You know, she had always wanted to hike this trail, and here she was, and it was just kind of a little bit rough.
Yeah.
But it was nice to visit with her. But at that. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, it was so nice to see her too, because one of the things, we chose to hike later in the season because
I don't want to see a ton of people,
but it's so fun to have those interactions with people on the trail and just hear kind of what they've been through, and tell them about the little beta that you have. And so it kind of brightened my day to meet her, because at that point I had resolved that we weren't going to see anyone else, because it just felt so remote and desolate.
The Desolations.
We were almost to the Desolations.
Yeah. So we visited with her for a little bit, and this is the important part of this conversation, is I stretched my hips, because I wrote in my journal, like, wow, relatively good day for my foot. But the hip pain that I had on day 1 was kind of circling back around and causing a problem for me. And so we'd been going downhill pretty much the whole time since we'd left Barker Pass. And then it started to be kind of the uphill area. And so we were going uphill, and I was just starting to have a lot more pain in my hip, but I'm, me, I'm like, I'll just walk it out. And then all of a sudden, there came this point where the muscles in my hip said, like, you cannot lift your leg. What is this called when your hip
flexes?
Is it flexing? So
when you step forward?
Yeah. I literally couldn't, my hip would not flex. Like, the muscles, I would say to the muscles, I say, now's the time for you to do this. And they were like, no.
I was walking behind Carrie thinking about, like, okay, doing the math, the calculations in my head. I think we had maybe 3 hours till sundown, and we had something like 7 miles. Yeah. I'm like, okay, this is, like, very doable. We're fine. And then all of a sudden, Carrie just, like, starts to, like, limp. And she's, like, limping and limping even slower. And all of a sudden she stops, and I'm like, oh gosh, like, how are we going to make it through our stagnant pond now?
I was just like, hey, like, quick heads up. I can't lift my leg. Like, I can't actually take a step because the muscles say no.
And in my mind, I was like, oh, like, we kind of planned our whole trip on the fact that we could walk.
that our muscles would
and
say
now,
yes.
If one of our members is unable to move her leg, I don't really know what our plan is.
Well, the good news is I think I could walk downhill, because you don't really have to lift, you don't have to bend.
Sure,
But the problem is that we're at the lowest point, so either way we're gonna have to go uphill. Like, if I wanted to go back to Barker Pass another 5 miles, I would have to be capable of lifting my leg, and to go the other way I also need to be capable of lifting my leg.
I guess you could have tried to go backwards walking.
Well, yeah, why didn't you suggest that at the time?
Well,
so anyways,
this is kind of stressful though, because once again, it's like you're always, mindful of the fact that injuries can derail you, but usually
you just feel like it's not going to just suddenly come out of nowhere where you can't lift your hip anymore. And so I was kind of thinking, like, I don't know what we're going to do. And so I was like, well, Molly, why don't you check my hips? Because she's a physical therapist. And I feel like, for whatever reason, I kind of prayed, like, I don't know, God, what am I going to do? And then I was like, I don't know, can you check my SI joints? And they're a little off. And Molly reset it.
I just did a little muscle energy technique, and Carrie got up.
And then I got up, and it was immediately better. But then I also then had the fear of it though.
The fear of your hip not working anymore.
Coming back. The fear of me saying lift leg, and then being like, I'm not going to do that for you. That's painful. So I was just
actually so wild.
It was just a weird scenario.
And I was just like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then also
my body always works so well for me. But on this trip it was like, so what if I just stop doing all the things that I normally do and instead did the opposite? Yeah, but I was just really grateful that you were able to fix that for me.
Yeah, me too.
And that I was able to stand up and start walking uphill. And then I feel like you were like, you should clench your cheek when you step. And that might help stabilize it in the front. And so then I'm trying to walk and think about that. And it was just quite an experience.
Wild. Yeah. So wild is the way to describe it. So, fortunately, that was only a brief break where Carrie had to lay on the trail as I, stood over her to, assess some pelvic landmarks and do some muscle energy techniques. And I was just, hoping that no one was gonna, walk down the trail and see me, crouching over my sister. I'm a physical therapist.
We're just doing a little bit of muscle energy techniques.
Just a little therapy. Gosh, that was wild.
Yeah, that was really threw me for a loop.
Oh,
and then it's just weird to feel like I can't trust any part of my body. feel like I also, the next day was my birthday, and then I just started thinking, okay, so I guess that 28 is the year where my body stops working.
27 and 364
well, yeah, 364 days. But, it was like pre-gaming.
Yes. Sad.
So this next section, it's funny because I was telling Molly, I wrote in my journal, it was so rough because there's a lot of blowdown, but it's because I had just had my complete lack of ability to lift my leg, so that I was like a little anxious to lift my leg so many times, and it was like a little sore still. Yeah. So then there was all these little logs I had to step over, and then I don't know if you remember, but there would be like, you got to go up the hill to go around the stump and down the hill, and I would just be like trying to throw my body over because I was like, I don't want to put in more up and downhill because I'm worried about my hip. And obviously it would be much better for my hip if I just throw my body over.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was kind of interesting. That was when we got into the El Dorado National Forest, I believe. Oh. And that actually was kind of a vibe switch to where it felt a little like creepy there.
Yeah.
And I think it was just like less well maintained.
We like got to the sign that's like faded wooden sign that says the Desolation Wilderness.
Yeah, actually.
Must have a permit to camp here. And then it like got, I think it once again was the clouds, because right after your hip issue, actually there was a decent amount of blue sky. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the clouds came back and we're like hiking into clouds. And it was just this weird like lighting and kind of like creepy, like withered, like
and there's no one around
and no one is there. And you don't know if your body's gonna work at any point in time.
Will it just say no?
But yeah, so then I don't know, we started being like, oh gosh, I think we're gonna camp pretty close to here.
Yeah.
And it just feels kind of
Well,
creepy.
First of all, it felt like it was forever to get there, and I just felt like it was taking forever and ever and ever. And it was funny.
And you were acting
maybe
like
it's because of my hip.
Maybe so.
And then I also had like unzipped the bottom part of my rain pants because my legs had been getting hot, and then we were walking through a part with all these like vines on the ground, and it was just whacking so much water inside of my pants. They were like catching on it, but I wasn't gonna fix it. I was in a little bit of a mood, I feel like.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I wasn't. I was pleasant. That was a test.
Yeah. She was very pleasant.
And so then we were getting close to that creepy place, and the wind was blowing through, and there was kind of the sun's going down.
And we were like kind of on a ridge.
Yeah, racing the sun because I had to, get my hips fixed. And then all of a sudden we came upon the most like dank stagnant pond I have ever seen in my life. Stagnant Pond is not enough of a name for how stagnant that pond was.
And here I had sunk my teeth into one comment that was like, I thought it was quite nice actually. And we both looked at that pond and we were like, I think we have about 20 minutes more daylight.
More daylight. I think I can definitely go further.
Walking. Yeah.
And so we decided to just keep going further. And there wasn't supposed to really be water ahead, but at one of these campsites, someone had written like, there's a natural spring that forms a waterfall with a pool. And so we thought, okay, well, we'll just keep going till we find that. And we did. And it was the cutest little waterfall. I liked that spot a lot, actually.
I did too.
It wasn't creepy. It wasn't weird. It was kind of open.
There was a nice couple flat spots for a tent.
Areas to poop.
Areas to poop.
To dig cat holes.
Ew, Carrie.
Across the way, not near the water source. But there had been some areas where we were just
relieved though, because once again, compared to just like the creepy higher part of the ridge with this dank pond, all of a sudden we had our own little paradise. It was very nice.
So we were kind of getting out our sleeping pads. We'd set up our tent, and we're both
paper clipped and binder clipped it together.
And so we boiled our water, we got our food ready.
Yeah.
And then we're both sitting there blowing up our sleeping pads, and this guy comes up and he just this guy comes up and he says hi to us, and he sees that we're camping there, and he says, well, I'm not going to camp by you guys because I've got 3 more
camp near us.
He was a PCT hiker going southbound. He said, I don't think there's enough space, there's going to be 3 more tents coming. So he said, well, if you see my buddies, just tell them I continued on. So about 15 minutes later, we're blowing up our sleeping pads, and it was so funny because these guys show up and they're like laughing at us like, I didn't know you had 2 sleeping pads. And I was like, well,
what?
I mean, yeah, we share a tiny tent, but I'm not that close with her. I'm not going to share a sleeping pad. And then I think we said something like, yeah, I mean, there's 2 of us. And it was funny because the sun had set. We hadn't turned our headlamps on yet. And they had thought that we were their buddy, and we just had 2 sleeping pads.
Because we had the same sleeping pad as he did, and they were confused. So they were cool.
Yes, they were awesome to visit with. Super fun.
PCT southbound hikers. And yeah, they were cruising, but they stopped and visited with us for a little bit. And it was kind of fun because anytime you're on the PCT, it's like just cool to see the thru hikers and chat with them and rub shoulders a bit. And we'd been on the PCT for, I don't know, 10 miles or longer that day, and we hadn't really seen any thru hikers. So it was super cool to see them. And I'm thinking about this as well because I think our food was maybe rehydrating when we saw them. We tried, is it Alpine Fair?
No.
What is it called?
I don't know, but it's not Alpine Fair.
Alpine Start?
No.
Well,
none of these are the correct
meal
name.
we had,
no.
It was mac and cheese.
Yeah.
And then they put vegetables in it, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it actually tasted super good. It had peas, carrots, corn. Like, it had all the vegetables. We said this sounds revolting
at
to me.
REI to get it. We were just like, we're like not gonna get it. I don't know what the brand was. It's Alpine something.
We'll have to look that up later.
Wow, the noodles were like
like real noodles.
Like noodles.
I don't know.
And the way that it rehydrated, it tasted like pasta I had just made on my own stove. So
more or less.
That was just honestly, like, I really liked the thru hikers. That was fun. But the highlight for sure for me was eating that delightful food, and it's Alpine something.
Yes. And the highlight for me was that I was finally at camp. My hips appeared to more or less both be working, and my legs and my ankles. And we were going to have a nice night's sleep. I feel like it was kind of starting to warm up, actually. So we kind of knew it wasn't going to be a cold night in the tent. And I thought, in my head, I was like, there are two ways this can go. I'll have the worst birthday of my life tomorrow. Or I will have, ideally, a good birthday. And I guess we'll have to find out what that'll be.
Okay, I looked it up, though, and it is Alpine Fair. So
Alpine Fair? Like F-A-I-R?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Oh,
F-A-I-R.
Molly, that's Alpine Air.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It's Alpine Fair, Carrie. F-A-I-R-E.
Alpine Air for...
Is that the name of the brand?
It's Alpine Air.
I thought it was Alpine Fair.
I mean, okay, I'm zooming in on the bag.
It's
and
called
I can
Forever Young Mac and Cheese.
I can see, I'm going to be honest, I can see where you maybe thought that it was Alpine Fair because the E sort of runs into the word. But then if it was an F there, it would have been Alpen Fair.
That's a cooler name.
And the fair would be spelled F-A-I-R-E. So I'm not even clear on what that would mean.
Well, thank you for teaching me that right now.
So this has been an ad for Alpen Air.
I appreciate that, but it was really good. Forever Young Mac and Cheese.
Fair.
Alpine Air is what you call it.
Alpine Air.
So the other thing I will say, not related to the food, was that after I had my delicious bowl of mac and cheese, I took off my socks. And I was like, well, okay. So this is what I haven't told you guys.
I don't know this either.
My toe had been bothering me for a few days. When we got to Tahoe City, I looked at my toe and I was like, yep, there's like a small blister on the inside.
I'd like to interject and remind everyone I was dealing with like a multi-toe large blister trauma and in addition to that, tendinitis. But tell us more about your one minimal toe blister.
Whatever. So sometimes when I hike, I generally don't get any blisters at all, but occasionally I'll get like a very small blister on the side of my big toe on my right side, and then it always just like pops and it goes away. So it's fine. So I noticed it in Tahoe City. I was like, well, that's fine. And then we walked, from Tahoe City, and it was still fine. And then it felt like there was more pressure on the blister when we did our almost 20-mile day to the waterfall campsite. And so as we kept walking...
Stagnant Pond.
Yes, exactly. As we kept walking, I'd like wiggle my toe and I'd be like, yeah, I think it feels better. And I honestly thought the blister had popped and it was all done because it stopped hurting. And I took off my sock and I wrote that it was the biggest blister I had ever seen. And it was on my right toe. And I was just like, oh gosh. Like, I was fine when Carrie was the one having a breakdown of her hip or her ankle, all of the things. But now I have a blister. So how are we going to do this?
Yeah, how are we going to keep going?
So just keep in mind that the blister may increase in size over the time.
Just keep in mind that not only one of us was dealing with physical problems.
Because now I was also
She also had a major medical issue.
And it was a blister on my big
blister.
toe. It was massive, though.
It was large and in charge.
And it was in charge, and I thought, oh gosh, like, that'll be interesting to deal with as we continue
as time goes
on. Very big days.
Yeah.
As we have to
have a literal timeline that we have to meet. So, anyway, could go one way or the other. Could go really bad, or I actually did. I was thinking could go marginal.
That would be the best case scenario.
I was like, best case scenario, I have a marginal birthday tomorrow.
No.
So we'll find out, I guess, how it goes. Thank you so much for listening to yet another episode of the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast. As per the usual, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and anywhere you get podcasts. Once Molly finishes putting them on some of the platforms I thought they were already on, by searching Two Sisters on Adventures with the number 2. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for listening. Bye.